95.3 Olympia's KGY. Good morning. I'm Nat, and I have a special guest in the studio. Greg Devereaux is the executive director of the Washington Federation of State Employees. He's been the executive director since 1994, so number of years of service there. Greg, that makes, let's see, 18 years of service already, coming up on 18 years.
Very close.
All right. So, Greg, it's great to have you this morning. There are a number of issues that you would like to talk about that the Washington Federation of State Employees is involved in. You've had a big day on Capitol Hill, it sounds like, working on a number of initiatives. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple of the issues that you've wanted to talk about here. One of them is the social worker student loan or student debt relief. That's kind of an issue that's been going on here. A lot of our state workers have student loans and student debt. Can you tell me about how WFSE is working for them?
Yeah, I definitely can. I'd like to preface it, though, with just saying that our members feel like they're being driven out of the middle class, that during the Great Recession, they had 7 years without any pay increases at all. And actually, they took furloughs and cutbacks in pay at times. So what we're trying to do now, we're trying to put economic proposals together that will help them stay in the middle class. And one of them, we have a tremendous problem with our social workers. There are like 3,000 social workers in state government. They do incredible work, but the turnover among them is anywhere from 20 to 30% every year.
And what would you say the primary reason for that is?
It's the caseloads are just astronomical. They're supposed to have between 20, 30 cases. They can have upwards of 70 cases, and it's not possible to do the work. We've tried desperately to get them more money. We did in the last contract. The debt relief piece is so many of these folks come out of school, they have a master's degree, and they're $100,000 in debt, and they're making $40,000 in state government.
So, a couple of questions that I have on this. I mean, that salary range, I mean, that's been in effect for quite some time, and you're saying that it just has not increased over the years. Where do you think it should be?
Clearly, the state salary survey says it should be significantly higher, in the $60,000-$70,000 range. And you can't get ahead if you have that kind of debt when you start. So that's why we're working on this issue, the debt relief issue, because that would make morale-wise, that would make a huge difference with folks coming out of school not being squeezed while they're trying to do this extremely difficult work.
Now, is there any hope to reduce caseloads or get additional jobs created?
They, the social workers are moving from the Department of Social and Health Services to the department. It's a new department. Currently, it's the Department of Early Learning. Those two, early learning and social work, will be combined. There is the hope that, with the focus on those areas, that they may get better funding in the legislature.
Okay, so tied in with the debt relief, I should say before we continue, what would that plan look like? I mean, the debt relief plan.
Yeah, the Senate Bill 6259 really, it talks about, it could relieve up to $50,000 in debt over a period of years, and that would make a substantial difference for our members.
Okay. Let's talk about House Bill 2583, which is affordable housing for a number of
this
these
is
workers.
another economic issue that's just reached epic proportions, especially in the King County, Pierce county areas, but it's expanding into Snohomish, Spokane, and it really is affordable housing. Our members are getting pushed further and further into the suburbs. They have to drive further, which is reduced costs, increased costs, and they can't live in King County anymore. A house that you could buy for $150,000 10 years ago is now $700,000.
Yeah, and I have a number of friends and family members that live and work up there, and it is truly almost impossible to buy a house in King County or around Seattle. and be within a very close proximity to work and actually be able to afford it, especially if you're on a single income.
Right. And to us, this is not just a state worker issue, it's a middle class issue. It's hitting everybody in King County. And so what we're trying to do with 2583 is to say some time ago there was a prohibition on, on rent control, and we're saying that should be lifted. And we're not dictating any particular things statewide like the ban on rent controls. What we're saying is localities should be able to have the flexibility to work out what they can do with their communities, their residents.
Do you have any other examples of like other cities that have removed their rent control,
You
or
know,
excuse me, that have re-implemented their rent control?
I don't offhand. There are cities, New York City, others that have rent control in place. We would have to do more research to see who has re-implemented that.
Okay, okay. I'd just be curious to see the progress that
But
some of the
this,
other places have made.
we have really been working with our folks in high cost areas for some time, and for many years we were trying to get what we call the differential, meaning you'd get some 5%, 10%, whatever increase in pay for living in a high cost area. We finally came to the realization, though, you can get somebody a 10%, a 20% pay increase in King County. That's not going to address the problem.
Yeah.
You still can't buy a $700,000 home when you're making $40,000.
So is the state being pretty proactive? I mean, I guess if you're from my understanding, if you're at a certain level and you have a position in Spokane versus a position in downtown Seattle, is there any cost of living increases currently, or is it just straight across the board?
They
somewhere?
do. State Patrol has it in place, I'm told. The federal government also does it in high cost areas in the state. Both the State Patrol and the federal government do it in Washington State. I don't know of other, private sector employers might do something. I don't know of other public sector at this point. But it really has reached, as I said, crisis proportions.
But the point is even with that, it's not enough. I mean, you might get 5-10%. I
Exactly.
haven't heard of more than 15% difference. And I mean, I would imagine there's a big difference between living and working in Spokane or, the outer outskirts versus downtown Seattle.
Yeah.
Or even
I
Olympia for that matter.
I don't think there's any question. And as I mentioned, for years we've tried to address this as a pay issue, and we finally came to the realization that that's not enough. That this really is a housing issue. It's a middle class issue. It's across the country, and we need to do something about it in this state.
All right. So in front of me here, we've got Senate House Bill 1434 and the State Bill 5295, which is shared leave. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
This was something that we negotiated in the last round of bargaining. It had to move through the legislature, and it didn't make it through last session. So we're trying to get it through this session. It's really two-pronged. It helps young families. It allows pregnancy-related disability, and it also allows shared leave for time to bond with your child.
So can you tell me about the current situation and then what does this address and bring into it?
Yeah. So currently, you can use shared leave for a number of illnesses and other things. Folks can donate their leave to you when you have situations, but they're fairly limited. This would expand that leave to allow pregnancy-related disability and/or time to bond with a new child. And
Okay.
both of those, it doesn't hit everybody, but it is super family friendly, and it's something if we can't get the money that we need for all salaries, and public workers are really lagging behind after this recession. This is something that just helps families with young children or babies.
So we're talking about a couple of months then.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
in
great.
the first couple of months.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just end with, we need desperately to address some of the economic issues in this country. And we think by bringing up, social worker debt relief, affordable housing, shared leave, these are things that will help the middle class. get back to where they were.
And would you say overall you've been making some progress, or is there a lot of opposition?
No.
Okay.
I think folks really. There's been an incredible reception by the legislature. We had a legislator, immediately when we talked about housing, she said, I want to sponsor 2583 right away." And I think there's been a lot of interest in the social worker debt relief bill as well. I think people realize, folks realize how squeezed folks are in this country, and the federal tax bill at the moment, it looks good. You might get some money on the front end, but on the back end, you may have to pay a lot more, and that's going to squeeze people further.
Mm-hmm. All right, Greg. Well, thank you very much for chatting with me this morning. That was Greg Devereaux. He's the executive director of the Washington Federation of State Employees. Again, thanks for stopping in.
Thank you very much.
It's 95.3 KGY.